Hey everybody, it's James here with the Sawyer Family Reviews channel, and today's Collecting Warehouse product video is all about figures you just can't stand. Well, not in like you don't like them, in a they fall over and always you're having to pick them up, or they drop off the shelf and you just can't get them to stand up kind of stand. And the doll stands that I use to solve that problem, to make them stand and stay where they're supposed to stay. All right, let's jump in. Okay, before we start showing the doll stands in use with a bunch of figure lines, I want to go over how to measure your figure or doll for a doll stand first. This seems to be an area of confusion sometimes with people, so I just figure it's easier to go over it in the video for you guys before you go to the doll stand sizing chart. So when you go to collectingwarehouse.com to buy a doll stand, there is a little link at the top that says the doll stand sizing chart, and it's going to ask you for 3 measurements. And those 3 measurements are, don't mind my rusty old tape measure here, the height of the doll, the overall height, from the feet all the way to the top of the head. So it's 18 inches here on the Neca quarter scale Michael Keaton Batman. Then we're going to go with the waist height. So it's the height from the feet up to the waist. And in his case, it's right at about the 10.5 to 11 inch mark. And then we're going to go with the waist width. Not the circumference, but the actual width of one side of the waist to the other. So in his case, it's 3.5 inches. So with those 3 measurements, you should be able to go on and look at the chart and figure out the doll stand that's best going to fit those sizes. It's at least going to get you in the ballpark. And then you can kind of look at the size of the base that's on there, because we'll give you the diameter of the base. We'll give you the variable lengths and widths of the clamp that goes around here. Because all these doll stands are 2 parts. You've got a base and you've got a clip. And when the clip goes in, it can go up and down, so it's got some play that way. And then it'll open and a little bit and get tighter. So there's a little bit of play with those measurements, but those 3 measurements we have found are the best ones to get to pick the right doll stand without actually being in person to pick a doll stand. So again, you're going to want the overall height of the figure, the height of the figure's waist, and the width of the waist. Those are the 3 measurements you're going to need. Alright, so let's look at a few of these. You know what, since we're right here and we've got the Michael Keaton right here, this is the 3075. I have found that this is the best for most of Neca's quarter scales. I prefer black on all these stands, so all the choices that I'm going to show you are the black versions of stands. But when you get in there and you look at the doll stand sizing chart, there's often a white version of a lot of these, and then even with the smaller ones, there's like multicolor versions. But for me, as personally, my displays, I think the black looks the best. So for the Michael Keaton quarter scale Batman, I went with the 3075. I believe that Blaze has used this same one on some of his quarter scales too from NECA. I don't know about the Ninja Turtles, because those have those big, wide, the turtle shell waists. So I don't know if it's going to work that well on those. But for me, this is really great, for this one especially. This is one of NECA's more popular quarter scales. So yeah, 3075. There it is. Now let's go, I guess we'll go in reverse order. We'll go smaller and smaller with the bases, okay? Let's move on to the next one. Okay, the next one up is the 2075. Now I use this one for a lot of 6-inch lines and 7-inch lines. Sometimes it's ones that even have peg holes already, but I don't really trust a lot of the peg hole stands. I have found that my figures still fall over when I use a peg stand, and for my collection, I don't want to take a chance of figures falling over. So I'll use this for a lot of 6-inch and 7-inch stuff. Now the clip is kind of big for your standard size Marvel Legends, but for bigger, wider figures, so like look, we have a Dusty Rhodes here from the WWE Mattel line, and as you can see, the waist is pretty good on him. I know he's sort of a thicker figure, but figures of the 6-inch variety that have those thicker waists, this 2075 is pretty great for. Here's a Mythic Legions figure. As you can see, the grip on him is pretty nice. And then we've got Beast here from the Marvel Select line. Get that over a little bit. So while it's not a great fit for your standard size Marvel Legends, like the normal size guys, larger waisted Marvel Legends, figures with big belts and thicker figures fit really good on this 2075 stand. And I find that those are a lot of times are the problem with the actual standard figure stands are these thicker, heavier figures. So these are great. I mean, this is not falling over. That's not going anywhere. It's also really good for Mego figures. Let me see if we can get this one on here. Which Mego figures, with the way they're constructed, there's no peg holes, and they've got these rubber bands that are holding them together, so they're not really good for standing on their own. But as you can see, Dr. McCoy here is standing up great with this 2075 stand. So again, that is the DSK 2075. Let's take a step down from there. Okay, next up we have the 20SMB. Now this stand has a bit of a bend to it, right above here. I think it's meant for like Skipper dolls and Francine dolls. I can't remember off the top of my head, but it's definitely meant for a smaller waisted doll that's taller. So it has this smaller waist clip, which is much smaller than the 2075, but it also has this bend here. So what I use this for is my vintage Masters of the Universe. And I don't clip the waist, I clip the neck. So this is Buzzsaw Hordak. So he's a little difficult to deal with because he's got this little clip here, and it'll automatically make his chest thing pop open. But as you can see, this holds these up really well. I'm going to drop this down just a little bit and zoom in since I'm working on a smaller scale now. There we go. So this looks really good for him. And now, for figures like this, this brings up another good thing that I should have talked to you about when we were doing the measurements. If you want to do the clip around the figure's neck, use that measurement as the waist. So whatever you're wanting the clip to go around, that should be your waist height measurement. So in the case of these, I probably wouldn't do the overall height of the figure. I would just do the height of the waist as the height of the neck to figure out which stand to use. Now, the other thing about this 20SMB, so as you can see, it's really good for Masters of the Universe if you're going around the neck. If you wanted to, now this is not something we recommend doing with these stands, but if you wanted to, you could try and straighten out that stand a bit, and you'd get yourself a better 6-inch stand for smaller waisted figures. So this is the Marvel Legends Retro Iceman, and what I've done here is that I have straightened out that bend by just, what I would do is I would take the stand, get it to the point where the bend is, let's get this out here, and then I would just bring it back and bend it straight. It's not perfect, but it does work really well for getting around these slimmer 6-inch figures. So if you have a figure that has a slim waist, it's a 6-inch figure, and you can't get it to stand, this is something maybe you might want to try. It's not perfect, and hopefully one day Kaiser will offer this stand where it's a straight version of the 20SMB. But for now, if you're in a pinch, that's what you can do with it. So again, this is the 20SMB, really good for vintage Masters of the Universe if you go around their necks. Let's take a look at one more stand that's going to cover a couple of different lines. Now this little guy here is the 1075. So far we've looked at a 2075, which is this guy right here. We looked at the 3075 on the Michael Keaton quarter scale Batman, and we looked at the 20SMB on the Masters of the Universe figure. So you can see this 1075 is a little tiny guy right here. Let me pull this up just a little bit so you can see all of those stands together. So this little guy is pretty versatile. I use it for Secret Wars, which don't have peg holes. So for the Secret Wars collection that you don't want to fall down on all the time, this little tiny 1075 stand is fantastic. So it just clips around the waist, and as you can see, Iceman there is standing up just fine. He's not going to go anywhere. Iceman figures, for Secret Wars collectors out there, you know his joints are notoriously loose. So getting him to stand on his own without falling down, a nightmare, unless you use one of these doll stands. So I use it for him. It's also really good for Justice League Unlimited figures. Now, a lot of the Justice League Unlimited figures do have peg holes, but their ankles are so tiny that they fall down over time. So this is a really good stand for Justice League Unlimited figures. Here's a Batman the Animated Series Harley Quinn that it's really good for. And again, these have peg holes, but they're made of sort of a softer plastic, and they have a lot of times these really tiny ankles. So even though they could go on a pegged stand, they do fall down over time. The other thing that I use it for, and it's good for probably a lot of different prototype collectors, is for my like smaller hard copies, stuff that's like in the 4 or 5 inch scale. So this is a painted hard copy of Wolverine. It's a prototype, and a lot of times the prototypes won't have, this one does. This one does have peg holes, but they've just been drilled into the resin, and I don't really want to use that and take the chance of cracking the resin. But a lot of times hard copies won't have peg holes. So something to hold up your prototypes, because hard copies, you know, they're not always the tightest joints. It's something you want to protect. So I use it for hard copies as well that's in this kind of scale that matches these guys. So that is, again, the 1075, and I think it's really good for a lot of smaller scale figures. I'm sure there's a bunch that I don't personally collect that it'd be really good for in that 4 inch to 5 inch type range. So hopefully this has helped you guys out a little bit as fellow collectors for some solutions to figures that are really kind of tough to stand. As always, if you have any questions or if you want to know about a certain figure will work in a certain stand, you're welcome to email us at email@collectingwarehouse.com, or you can just leave a comment down below and I'll do my best to answer it here at YouTube. Again, all of this product will be linked in the info section below, just as I did on the other video. So if you want to go straight to one of these products, you can just check down below and it'll take you directly to the stand that I showed here today. Again, if there's something that you have that doesn't fit one of these stands, take a look at that doll stand sizing chart and give a shot on there as to one that might work for your product. Okay, so that wraps up this one. I think that the next video will probably be on either acrylic risers or maybe action figure stands. I don't know just yet. So hopefully you're enjoying these videos, and yeah, I'll see you guys next time.